Okay. I love doing that. All right. Welcome, everybody, to the Swampscott School Committee regular session meeting for Thursday, November 7th, 2024. We are at Swampscott High School, 200 Essex Street, room B129. I call the meeting to order, and if I could ask if you are able, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Do we have love of learning?
We do not.
We do not. Okay. So we've changed the schedule a little bit, and we're now going to committee chair, which is me. We're going to discuss the superintendent search. Part A on the agenda, discussion and review, school committee interview, and community conversation with Mr. Jason Kalishman. Would anyone like to start? Any discussion or comment about the last couple of events? Anybody?
I can start.
Please, feel free. Mr. Jancis.
So I took a few notes just from our interview, from kind of after the community event, just memorialize some thoughts, and I just want you to share some of those publicly. And I'm sorry, we're just going to wait and see. Thank you. So I think part of what we do, we listen to everything Jason Kalishman had said to us. Our job is to evaluate and take what he said into account, take what others have said into account. And at the end of the day, I thought Jason presented himself and his vision extremely well. Some specifics that I had written down. I thought Jason had demonstrated very strong leadership skills. I thought that his years at the middle school showed someone who had the capacity to make decisions, to stay on top of things immediately and get satisfactory resolutions. His years in education, I thought, played a big part in my thinking and getting to this point in the process. As far as another thing I thought was a plus was Jason's effective communication skills. The way that Jason talked about his experiences at the middle school as the principal, what he thought as potential superintendent, how he would deal with certain situations, the questions we had for him, I thought the way he communicated that was very effective. Also on just for collaboration and teamwork, I thought, again, some of the examples that Jason had demonstrated, showed his leadership capability, his ability to build strong relationships. One of the other things that I had noted, this actually came out of the Monday session, that you were willing to empower others to kind of go and do their thing, and basically giving them the tools and the autonomy to do what they want, but under your overall guidance. I thought that was encouraging to hear. Again, all pluses. Some, I'm not going to say they're minuses, but I think we all agreed they were areas for improvement. Were kind of budget and finance. I think you even admitted as much, Jason, that that's an area that you've been kind of peripherally plugged into, but there's as the super, that would be something that you would have to jump into the deep end and be able to deal with that. Again, not a negative, just an area for improvement. Another thing I thought was that stood out to me was again it's kind of the flip side of what we had talked about, but your problem-solving abilities, again, some of the examples you provided, some of the statements that were made on your behalf demonstrated to me that you were able to think kind of outside the box in certain situations, be able to solve problems in a satisfactory manner. And lastly, your community engagement came through loud and clear to me as far as, as the principal at the middle school, you've gone out of your way to be at events, to talk to parents. And I think one of the most important things for me has been, as part of that engagement, your capability to listen and, if necessary, do a course correction. I think for me that was a really important attribute that stood out, that if something's not working, you're willing to take a step back, have a discussion, and say, hey, is this a direction we really want to go, or do we need to do a course correction? So, I thought, again, that pointed to strong leadership capabilities, and something that gave me great confidence that as problems come up, as they always do, that those tools that you're demonstrating would suit you well. So, Glenn, I'll stop there, but I'll reserve the right later to add additional comment.
Absolutely. Thank you, John. Karen?
Sure. I would say that coming off the formal interview that we had, I was very pleased. I thought that it was a thorough discussion. I thought we had really good answers that were well thought out and that were very meaningful. What I thought was interesting is that going into the community event, I thought a lot of the comments and questions were actually similar, which means to me that we were hitting all the salient points and that we were asking the right questions and that we were getting to the meat of what's really important to us and to our district and our community. So I think that the process was meaningful, and I think we were really able to learn from it. I feel confident myself, both in the sense that I think we're very lucky that we have an internal candidate. I think that we know someone who is dedicated and competent, and that we can feel good that we know this person after not just the interview and the community conversation, but in my case, over a decade of working alongside this person. So I personally feel that Mr. Kalishman is the ideal candidate for the next superintendent because of all of those reasons.
Great. Thank you, Karen. Suzanne?
I'm going to lead off with, I think, I'm happy to have an internal candidate. I'm happy we have a district that has a deep bench, and I'm going to lead with, I think Mr. Kalishman is going to make a wonderful superintendent. I think that I think that the strongest thing, and I think this is what a lot of people want to see, is a presence in the community, and you certainly have that. And I think that that presence is really important to people, and your approachability, and through all the letters of support we got from you, there was just a theme that ran through them all of your ability to listen and communicate, about your ability to give people agency, and to be creative about problem solving, or to do course corrections, and I mean all those things just came through just about with every letter. So I know you're going to be well suited for the job. Like John, I have some areas where maybe there's some opportunities for more growth, and budget would be one of them. I think figuring out your own voice and how you're going to create your relationship with the town, because we've had varying success as this committee, and I think that at the leadership, I think you're going to find it's just a really important way for you to figure out how your voice and your strength is going to come across in your relationships with people in town. And right now, it's a little tumultuous, and it's going to be like that. And I think that you're going to be able to do it, but I think that's just an opportunity. And I think the other area I kind of worry about is sometimes you're too approachable, or I think that it's a strength and a weakness at the same time. And I applaud your approachability and your communication, and then also you just want to be able to like pull back and have your authority and that sort of stuff. And I think you're going to figure that out, because I'm pretty sure you know that. And so I think, I'm sorry I missed the community conversations, but like Karen, I think we did a really good job on the night where we had our discussion. I think we hit on all of the points that I thought we wanted to, so.
Great, thank you. Ms. O'Connor.
It's hard to follow up on these. I have a lot of very similar things written down, so I'm just going to start where, sort of at the end for me. Some have asked why we didn't open up the process to outside candidates. I think we've talked about it a little bit, but I just want to say this. Swampscott is a unique town with only 3 square miles, and it's the kind of place that people choose to come back to. This wasn't the kind of town that I grew up in, but it's the kind of town that I very intentionally raised my children in. When I joined this committee, our district was in the middle of a great upheaval, and nearly the entire leadership team has transformed over the past decade. Most small towns like ours tend to be stepping stones for bigger and sexier positions. When we hired Superintendent Angelakis, it was with intention to smooth the waters, intention to have someone the teachers and the community could count on to make their career here. With the average superintendent tenure of 2 to 4 years, I believe we chose well, because longevity provides an important thing that education needs, which is stability. So what feels like forever ago, the school committee looked to our superintendent to develop her staff and prepare Swampscott for the future and really create a succession plan. It's taken time, but in nearly every key position, superintendent, you have developed bench strength to not only do a particular position well, but to think broadly as a team and about our district. This broad competency within our district is something that I'm personally very proud of, which is why there really was no need to do a broad search, and that I really appreciate the work that you have done, not only in developing your team, but in coming to us with a very well thought out recommendation when we asked that for you. In addition to what I thought was a pretty difficult night for Mr. Kalishman for 2 hours, I thought you did very well. I'm not going to repeat the things that my colleagues have said, but it's leadership, community building, course corrections, confidence, leadership style. In addition, I have to say, I really appreciate all of the letters that we received as a committee, both the ones that were strongly in support and the ones that registered some concerns. They were all really important for us to hear, as well as for the people who filled out our survey. Certainly not as many people as we would have liked, but it was helpful. I want to say that there were 3 people in particular whose letters and statements really helped me to make my decision. Principal Sanborn, the Dean of Students, Mary Powers, and Vice Principal of the Middle School, Emily Zotto. In the role of superintendent, Jason will transition away from the day-to-day interactions with students. Much of his time will be spent with his leadership team. And getting these 3 different perspectives from these women was really critical. One, a seasoned educator who was lured back after retiring. She has seen it all with decades in the district. One, a teacher who developed into an outstanding leader, a principal, partly under Jason's tutelage. She became his peer. And then a 3rd educator who transitioned into leadership and is also on her way with a fantastic trajectory. Having their thoughtful and distinctive endorsements codified what I have seen in Jason Kalishman. His leadership, his continued growth, dedication to doing right by his students and staff, forward thinking, strong collaboration, and his charm and humility. There's always a human element here with such an important decision, and I know personally that there's the moments of am I getting this right? But I really have no doubt, and I enthusiastically endorse Jason Kalishman as the right person to step into this position. the benefits of developing professionally within the district, and then moving on to lead it is really a win for our kids and our community. And I'm confident that if people in our community don't already know him, that they're going to come to view him as the right person for this job as well.
Thank you, Ms. O'Connor. Thank you, everybody. Before I make my words, I just do want to say that the school committee did receive a very lengthy, well-written letter from Mr. Andrake. Of course, it was well-written and very long, but I'll read the first paragraph. Dear school committee members, I have written this letter in support of Jason Kalishman for Swampscott's next superintendent of schools. I had the good fortune of being a science educator for 36 years in Swampscott, and in that time worked under several superintendents. I also had the unique experience of having Jason as a student in my classroom, and then many years later as my assistant principal and principal. And it's from this perspective that I share my thoughts and hopes that you will approve of Mr. Kalishman. So, to Mr. Andrake, thank you very much. For me, first I want to thank the entire school committee for their assistance with this process. As Amy said, it was a deliberate process. We spoke to many, many people to gain an understanding about what we should do. For me personally, I just go back to when I was first on the committee many years ago, and we brought in a superintendent after a lengthy worldwide search that was problematic. Just factually was problematic. So I'd like to thank a few people. First of all, to Mr. Kalishman, thank you very much for your enthusiasm, for raising your hand, for meeting with me personally a couple times to discuss this, to answering our questions for nearly 2 hours, and then at the community discussion. I am confident that you know what you don't know. And I agree with both Karen and Suzanne. There is definitely room for growth, and I am confident that if the committee votes that way, you will achieve that growth. I want to publicly thank Superintendent Angelakis, who assisted with just listening to when I was talking about, process and about answering questions of parents, and I appreciate that. Thank you very much. I also like to thank Glenn Kuchar of the Mass Association of School Committees. Glenn has done this for a very long time, and he guided us on, again, process, what to do, what not to do, and to not be afraid to take a step. I also want to thank Mr. Halloran, who moderated the community conversation. Really, the important part was so we all could pay attention to what was being said. I know we were up here for a couple hours asking Mr. Kalishman questions, and I think we're all taking notes, and sometimes it gets hard to listen as you're taking notes. To the community, to the vast number of emails and letters that you sent, please stay that engaged as we start to talk about budget. Whether you had questions about process, whether you had concerns, whether you had accolades, thank you for sending those emails and letters. Thank you for stopping me at Whole Foods a couple times. Thank you. The school district is the community, the parents, and everyone else. It's your school district. We're here for a very short time. So if you have questions, you have comments, don't stop today. Please let us know. And we promise we're working on the email issue that we have. So I've known Mr. Kalishman for a very long time. I have been sitting in his, if I'm repeating, I apologize. I was sitting in his office with a twin A on one hand, twin A on another hand, and Mr. Kalishman telling their mother and I what's what. And it's not an easy thing to do, to tell us what was what, and it was done professionally. And at that point, those many years ago, it was very evident that Mr. Kalishman was a leader. Through this process, I have gained a greater insight of those leadership abilities. Yes, there is room to grow. I think that's a good thing. It's not an easy job, as the Superintendent Angelakis will tell you. It takes a while to gain an understanding, as Ms. Wright said, it's hard not to be too involved, but you can't be too involved. It can't be too macro. That's why you have this great staff that has been put together for you. And we say that all the time. If someone sends us an email, you have to follow the steps. I am confident that you will meet the goals and responsibilities of the position. And I appreciate you raising your hand and throwing it into the ring. With that, unless there's any other discussion, can someone please make a motion? Ms. O'Connor.
I will make a motion. I move that the school committee appoint Mr. Jason Kalishman as superintendent designee effective immediately, and that effective July 1st, 2025, Mr. Kalishman be appointed as the superintendent of the Swampscott School District for a period of 3 calendar years, and that the school committee begin negotiations with Mr. Kalishman on an appropriate employment contract.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. I do want a roll call vote, please. I will start with Ms. O'Connor.
Yes.
Ms. Wright.
Yes.
Ms. Marshall.
Yes.
Mr. Jantis.
Yes.
I will also vote yes. With that, the motion to appoint Jason Kalishman as superintendent designee effective immediately, and that effective July 1, 2025, Mr. Kalishman be appointed as superintendent of Swampscott Public School District for a period of 3 calendar years, and that the school committee begin negotiations with Mr. Kalishman on an appropriate employment contract. Passes unanimously. Congratulations, Mr. Kalishman.
I'm gonna pass the baton soon. I think.
I'm a proud mama.
I want to say the biggest smile came from our superintendent, and I just saw this giant relief. I think you just reversed aged about 10 years.
I just have to say one thing. I heard everything you all said in terms of areas for growth, but I also find it a little comical that every year when you evaluate me after 11 years, I still have areas for growth. So if he came in his first year and didn't have areas to strengthen, I'd be really concerned. But I am a proud mama. I appreciate the committee listening to me and then going through such a thorough process. But there, as I said in the beginning, there is a passion, there is a commitment, there is a dedication to this district. And it'll be 11 years when I set sail in June. And that's something I look forward to watching Mr. Kalishman have longevity here. And he does have this amazing team around him. So I am a proud mama, sorry.
Jason, if you'd like to make a couple comments, I know that your other commitments this evening.
Is this on? Okay. No, I just want to thank everybody for the opportunity. I am so proud and honored that this has come to fruition, and I'm not going to let you down.
Thank you very much. All right. Thank you, everybody. I really appreciate it again. Committee comments. Ms. O'Connor.
I got nothing. After this week, that is just icing. Perfect way.
Exactly.
Very happy.
Ms. Wright.
I feel the same way. It's like mic drop, so.
Yeah.
Right. Ms. Marshall.
Nope, I'm good. Thank you.
Mr. Jansen.
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you, Glenn.
I have nothing myself, too.
How about our student rep?
I'm sorry. Noelle, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Very impolite of me.
I have some updates from the high school.
All right.
The girls have started practicing for Powder Puff. It is November 23rd. If you would like to come, it is a fundraiser. It's very exciting. It's very nice bonding. Everybody's very excited to face Marblehead on November 23rd.
Noelle, just because I'm a little confused of who's playing where now.
We're playing-
You're home.
We're home this year.
You're home this year. And Matt Bocci is coming to the high school on November 14th, which is very exciting. He was here last year. He gave a beautiful presentation about the effects of like drugs and alcohol in someone's life. And then I think he's also doing another session at night where the public can come. And I think it's a very, it's such an inspiring story. And I think if you would like, you could go and listen to it because it's just very powerful.
And there's going to be an activity about in plain sight where there's, I think it's a simulation, or he takes parents through what's in plain sight in your bedrooms of your children, and really signs of that. We worked with Ms. O'Connor can speak to the opioid money, if you want to talk.
So, thanks for bringing that up. I have to say, this represents the first set of money that the town is using to sponsor opioid education. It comes directly from the settlement with the state, and I think in particular this is like a $10,000 spend, and there is more in the works. Thanks to Mr. Kohut and team, particularly Ms. Hadley Woodfin. And yes, there is a second component to this, which is in plain sight. This is actually something that we're purchasing, so it will live in the town and can be used at all kinds of events, but a way to help parents understand, sorry kids, when they head into your room that, that what they think might just be benign is in fact drug paraphernalia. So sorry kids, we're blowing the lid off of that.
Can I ask, Amy, what time does it start on?
I think it's
next
6
Thursday?
o'clock. It's going to be here in the library, but importantly, the biggest piece of the puzzle is that he's here all day with Ms. Woodfin and the students. It was particularly compelling when I was helping kind of just work through the machinations of this, that Ms. Woodfin has data that speaks directly to sort of the before and after that her students had last year, and really how effective this is. So the health department was very excited to fund this, and we hope to grow and spend more money because we're going to have $1 million plus over the years. So it really is up to us. Not us, I'm just helping because I like to grab the money, but it is up to our district to identify the need and ask for it so that they can fund it. So thanks for bringing that up.
Anything else, no?
No, I'm all done.
Great, thank
And
you.
I'm going to excuse Noelle at 7 o'clock tonight because she has band practice,
All right.
band practice. So when she sneaks out, no need for concern.
Great. I look forward to attending that event.
Yeah, it'll be good.
Okay. That is community comment. I will turn it over to yourself, Ms. Angela.
So my superintendent's report tonight contains many presentations from facilities director to director of finance and to our director of teaching and learning and our assistant superintendent of student services. But we're going to start tonight by celebrating a student. And so I call Mr. Kohut down. Each year, the Massachusetts Association for School Committees, school superintendents, not school committees, sorry, interchangeable, awards a student a certificate of academic excellence. And this year, I'm going to have Mr. Kohut read so that we can honor this student. A little biography.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Leora Gozin is an exceptional scholar, activist, and simply a kind human being. Her dedication to making a positive impact on her community and the world at large is truly commendable. She exemplifies our big blue bees. Leora's passion for women's health and equality is evident through her involvement with the PAD Project's Ambassador Program, where she has demonstrated leadership and initiative. She is highly empathetic with a clear sense of duty for helping her community. Her commitment to addressing inequalities and supporting homeless women and girls through initiatives such as the PAD Drive and film screening demonstrates her character and her values. Furthermore, Leora's academic achievements, including excelling in 10 advanced placement courses 15 honors courses, as well as a dual enrollment course at North Shore Community College, and her hands-on experience at the Plymate Lab showcase her exceptional intellectual capabilities and dedication to making meaningful contributions in the field of public health. Leora has explored global cultures by spending time in Israel through a teen initiative program, as well as in France via a French exchange program. During her very rare spare time, Leora likes to bake and enjoys perusing consignment shops. Leora is the epitome of making a difference, and she gives all of us, that's the adults in the building, tremendous hope for the future. Congratulations, Leora.
So I'm going to read this certificate to you. It says, Leora Rogozin, having duly qualified under the standards prescribed by the Massachusetts Association of School Superintendent, is hereby awarded the Certificate of Academic Excellence. Congratulations.
Come down and get a picture, please.
Okay, go ahead, say something.
I do. If any of you know any teenagers, grades 7 to 12, there is a community service day event on November 24th. We will be making lasagnas for LifeBridge and snack bags for elementary school kids. This is on Sunday, November 24th, from 1 to 4 p.m. So if you know any children of that age, teenagers of that age, please let them know of this opportunity.
Right here.
Where's the event?
It is at Temple Emmanuel in Marblehead. So,
Wonderful, wonderful. Congratulations.
thank you.
Can somebody grab a picture so we can put it on Instagram?
Yeah.
You're the special,
Right
special
No, I'm the
photographer.
special. Come on, do you want to come down and take?
Yeah, Mom and Dad, come on.
Suzanne.
Come on down, really, take a picture.
Have mom and dad come down.
I know, absolutely.
I mean, you raised such a slacker.
Right.
Get the wall behind you.
Probably more space.
Come over here. Yes, we were.
Well, one with, one without.
We can take one with you guys first if you want.
One with, one without.
But I think
We're deciding for you.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
Dennis, you get in it. Yep.
you're all looking so smart.
I don't know, the resume.
Okay, so let's get the parents. Yep.
You guys. You can stand. Yeah, I was listening to that resume and I'm thinking,
For you.
Yeah, me too. I had like laundry I didn't get done today and like. You know what I mean? How do you find time?
So Leora, can I be the, look, Leora, can I be the annoying adult and ask you what everybody else is asking, which is where you're applying for colleges and if you've heard anything or?
I have not heard back from any schools yet, but I'll let you know when I do.
Oh, good.
All right, we follow up.
Thank you.
Congratulations, that is amazing.
Thank you so much.
all right. On to a couple of field trips. I am going to reverse order because we have a couple of guests here tonight. Would you like to come down and sit closer and speak about your field trip? Sorry, Joe, I've got it.
Anybody you want to record on?
Sure.
No pressure.
Do you guys have a presentation? Oh, okay, great. So as long as you have the mic, I'll have to remember to take it back.
Wow, look at that. That's very cool. That's very cool.
What is? Oh, I know. So yes, we have a field trip presentation tonight, thanks. We have Mr. McKay and Mr. Wildman here to talk about their field trip application for a trip to Kennedy Space Center. So I turn it over to you.
All right, as Ms. Androtz mentioned, I'm Mr. McKay, and we have Mr. Wildman here. We consider ourselves the astronomy team of Swampscott High School. When we started the astronomy program, I had this idea. I wanted to grow the program because astronomy I've found is actually quite popular at the high school level. My hope was one day we could do a field trip, maybe to Kennedy Space Center in Florida. With the help of Mr. Wildman, we've kind of fast-tracked this. We have all the groundwork together to do it this very spring. So we're gonna propose this to you and see what you think, and, yeah, we'll show you what we got.
So we're going to Kennedy Space Center, Cape Canaveral, Florida. Yeah, maybe you've gone on a cruise out of Florida, you've gone to there anyway, so that area. We're gonna go February vacation of 2025. We're gonna go from Sunday to Saturday, just the way the calendar would work out. That works the best. Gives a couple days after when we get back for the kids to readjust before school. So that was a plus. We're looking at 23 students, 5 chaperones. It might shift around depending on numbers, with the final numbers, but that's what we're proposing right now. We're flying from Boston, Orlando. We're gonna rent a few minivans. It was just the cheapest option, the easiest option to be able to get around point A to point B. We're gonna stay at there's a Best Western right outside of Kennedy Space Center. It's about a 20-minute ride away. It's probably the closest hotel in the area to there, so we chose the Best Western in Cocoa Beach. It's literally right across the causeway, so you could go up the highway, and I'll actually pull the map up for that. Quite literally, it's just straight up the highway, which is pretty nice, pretty convenient.
So it's right, nice thing about this stay here is it's right there on the beach. So amidst doing everything with Kennedy Space Center, we incorporated as well a day in at the Brevard Zoo in Vieira. So I lived in this area for about 5 years, so I'm pretty familiar with the area. And I know this was a good experience. They have manatee watches here. This will be a nice addition to it. Just 4 days at Kennedy gets to be a lot. Plus, our hotel will be right on the beach, so that's a nice thing for the kids in February to get to the beach. And it's very easy to supervise kids on the beach versus trying to go to like Disney.
Right.
So, yeah, it will. Downtown will basically be time on the beach, shopping. They have a pool there, so there'll be some downtime sprinkled in around the feature, which is Kennedy Space Center.
So we're looking at approximate cost right now of 23, 27. Depends on how many students go, how many chaperones go. That will fluctuate, but our goal price was something less than 25,000. We've been working with AAA, and they were able to get it down to right now 23. It's peak travel season, so we're going for 6 days. It's a pretty penny. I saw the price, and I thought I was gonna faint. It was bad, and after talking with our agent, she was able to get it down considerably. We went from a starting price, I think it was like 2,600 base, so she cut about $300 off, which is good. We're gonna do some fundraising to try and get down to 2,000 a student. Even lower, even better. We're gonna give them optional insurance through AAA, so if they need to cancel, they can do that and get the full reimbursement. So that takes the liability off of us.
Love that.
Yes, we want the insurance option to be there because we know it's flu season, things happen, and it just kind of gives them that option so we don't end up in a situation where someone's not able to go but they paid for it, and what do you do?
Right.
So that is the gist of it. We are essentially presenting you to see what you guys think, and if we have your approval, we can go forward with it this February. So do you have any questions?
I think I love the itinerary, as we always do with these trips.
So
Do we
is
have a
this
chaperone?
just for club members, or could other kids go too?
We're opening to the astronomy current and past students, and then if we don't hit the 23 student mark, we'll open it up to another group of students. It looks like we're going to open up to the junior
And
physics
seniors.
cohort and senior electives first, and then it should fill up by then because there's about 200 students in that cohort that are eligible from that. But we ran just this test the waters. We just ran a survey to see hey, if this field trip ran in the future, who would be interested, and we got about 25 students who were very
okay.
very passionate about it. So.
Can you go higher than 23?
Yes, but we'll have to get more chaperones.
Right, okay.
We're this is something we may do in successive years. So this is our sort of kind of first run with it. If it's something we can grow, then it's something we would do. So that's why we're gonna kind of prioritize the seniors and juniors, because if we run it successive years, this would be their only chance.
Right. Well, you all know where I stand, and I don't have a vote, so.
Out of curiosity, how many astronomy classes do we have? What do we teach?
3 sections of, I think the average size is 15, so it's about 45 students.
And
right
it's
now.
just like general astronomy?
Yeah.
Just kind of curious, like,
Wow.
who knew?
I know, exactly.
Oh, come on, you guys approved the,
I know, but I'm just
the
saying,
program
like,
of
you
studies.
I just,
Think of it as a college course.
I do, I just think it is.
Wow, that's great.
Thanks,
From my perspective, it sounds amazing.
And so I saw your list of chaperones, it looked like you had 5 male chaperones, like, any thought about, having a woman kind of jump in the mix?
We were asking around on the 3rd floor with all the science and technology teachers, just who we have available to talk to during the day, and all of them are busy, so we're gonna expand it outwards, just to see if we can get a 6th chaperone, from somewhere else in the building. It's just one of those, the school day gets very busy, and, you blink and
I
it's,
just think it's
2:30.
important to sort of
We did.
balance that.
I
for-
agree.
We did think
Right.
about that, and that is, we just don't have a confirmed 6th one, but yeah, we did think about that, and we are working on that. Our hope is to get a woman involved.
And so if you have fundraising goals, is there, are you looking at trying to maybe, I'm trying to, lower everyone's costs, but then if there's a kid with a hardship case or someone who really wants to go, I mean, do we have?
We do have
I'm just saying,
opportunities.
Great. I was
means
gonna
for
ask that question,
either
too.
direct fundraising or something to sort of help certain students that,
We have ways to offer financial aid or scholarships.
like, fundraising,
Great.
like targeted fundraising too for,
Great.
for a kiddie.
Yeah. Thank you, Sam. I was going to say the same question. While the gentlemen are here, would you like us to vote on this now?
Yes, please.
Okay. Any other comment from anybody about the trip, other than I'd like to go?
Categorically, yes.
Sure. All right. Then can I please have a motion to approve the field trip, the astronomy trip to Kennedy Space Center in Florida?
I will make the motion.
Somebody second? Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, there is none. The motion passes. Have a great time. Come on back and let us know how it went.
About it.
Yeah,
we want
Bring the
pictures
kids
out.
back.
Yeah, please make sure, no kids going to space. so.
Or something.
No kids going to
Or-
space.
You can get one.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thanks for doing it.
And Chris, my condolences.
No, never forget. Everybody loves it.
The next field trip that I need the school committee to consider is the ADL trip to Never Is Now Convention in New York City. Hadley Woodfin and Emily McDonald are the advisors to the ADL Club, and the field trip is for the ADL Club. And they attended last year with 29 high school students. The Never Is Now Convention welcomes high school students from across the globe with the goal of educating students on combating hate. I know that once it's approved out of state, we don't necessarily have to bring it back to you, but I do like you to all know who's going out of state, so I ask that we bring it before you, and I asked for a positive vote on this field trip as well.
Okay. Why don't we just vote on this
Yeah.
now? Anyone have any thoughts, comments?
I'll make the motion to approve.
Great. Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? None. The motion carries for the ADL Club to go to the Never Is Now Convention in New York City the first week in March.
Thank you.
I know that was a really big hit last year,
Right.
so
Yeah.
what a great.
Right.
Was that the one that we were well represented for high schools?
Yes.
Yeah.
Among a lot of
Yes.
college students?
No, that was the.
No, that was ADL.
It was
That
ADL,
was a Model
yeah.
UN where we were where we had like the biggest team going.
No.
It was
It was
ADL.
ADL.
Yeah, they've really done a great job. And then a highlight of our evening, we have our MCAS presentation with Dr. Bacon and Assistant Superintendent Raymond, and I'm going to turn it over to them.
Great, can somebody bring up the presentation?
All right. Let's see what we got here.
Da-da.
We're working on it. We've never done this before. I shouldn't laugh. I can't do it at all, so. John, what's taking so long?
Zoom is new every time.
Well, as opposed to the educators, we aren't necessarily.
I know, on it all the time, I know. Very true.
It's not like one of your teachers is doing this.
I completely understand. No judgment.
Just
We're
the
on it all the
slideshow
time.
Up at the upper right?
Upper right-hand corner, yeah,
Liz.
slideshow, perfect.
Perfect, great. Well, thanks everybody for having us. This is our annual trip to share with you some information about our MCAS and our school accountability results. So the presentation is divided into two parts. We'll talk about MCAS first, and then we'll talk about the accountability system that reflects not only our performance on MCAS, but our performance on a whole range of indicators that tell us sort of how we're doing as a district in terms of our improvement goals. Go to the next slide. All sorts of things on the screen there. See some of that? Okay, great. So today in our presentation, you're going to see a comparison of our 2024 MCAS results to our pre-pandemic performance in 2019. And our goal really has been to sort of reach back to, recovering from the pandemic and getting our students back to their performance levels before the pandemic. And it's also important to keep in mind that this DESE accountability system was introduced in 2018, and it was suspended during COVID, so we're only a couple years into our post-COVID performance in the accountability system. Move to the next slide. So this is our first part of the presentation on MCAS, and we're going to do three different takes on MCAS. The first one, the question we're going to be asking ourselves is how we're doing compared to before the pandemic. So now you can move to the first graph. Oh, wrong direction. Oh, there we go. Okay. So in this graph, we're looking at our ELA performance over the past several years. And you'll notice in the first set of bars in the elementary schools, we've had a decline in our ELA performance over time and also since last year. And that decline since last year is at the elementary level is something you'll also note in the math. And we attribute that to a lot of disruption during the last school year, getting ready for the move. So there were a lot of things that people were dealing with during that year. But happily, at the middle and high school, we saw performance growth over our 2023 results in ELA, with 6% more students meeting the state standards at the middle school and 16% more meeting the state standards at the high school. And at the high school, as you can see in ELA, we've now exceeded our pre-pandemic performance, which is great news for us. Go to the next slide. On our math performance. And so you see the same little drop in performance at the elementary that we pointed out on the ELA performance. And improved performance, again, at both middle and high school levels. But only at the elementary level have we exceeded our pre-pandemic performance when you look at the orange line compared to the blue line in each of the graphs. And recall that we introduced a new high-quality math instructional program at the elementary level in the 21-22 school year. So putting aside the dip since last year, you see a pattern of continued growth after we introduced that new math program. We'll go to the next slide, which is about science. So in this year in science in grades 5, grades 8, and in the high school biology exam, we outperformed ourselves in terms of comparison to 2023, which is great news. And one thing I do like to point out in this graph, it says MCAS 2.0 there in the sequence of scores from the high school biology exam. That's because in 2022, the state introduced a substantially different high school biology test, much more rigorous, much more application of skills rather than memorization of facts. And our performance, it's sort of, it's like apples to oranges. You really can't look at pre-pandemic performance and performance after 2022 in the science MCAS. But you can see that after the introduction of this new science MCAS, we've grown every year since then. So in summary, when we look at our performance pre and post-pandemic across all these, we see that we've now exceeded our pre-pandemic performance in high school ELA, in elementary mathematics, and we are very close to exceeding that, meeting and exceeding our pre-pandemic performance in middle school science as well. So last year it was just elementary math, now we have more and more grade spans and subject areas meeting our pre-pandemic levels. So that's great news for us.
Will you just remind me, when you're looking at these numbers, and it's grade 5 or grade 8, for example, it's really a new cohort each time.
Yes.
You're not following that same fifth grader into the next years.
Correct.
Okay. So it's a whole new group of kids.
It's a whole new group of kids, right? But they're still all our kids.
Yeah.
Right? And so you're going to see annual variations. And actually, take two, perfect segue. If you go into the next slide, You'll see why we also look at it in a different way. So take one is just comparing our performance over time. So take two, every year I'd like to look at how we're doing relative to the state. Because again, every year is a different cohort of students, but there's also larger factors that are affecting the variation from year to year. The pandemic certainly affected variation of our own trajectory over time. Other things are happening that are affecting all of us. So this is a way to say how well are our students doing in comparison to the general trends that we're seeing in the state, which may also be reflected in our own data. So if you move on to the next slide. So in 2024, our students met or exceeded state standards on the MCAS at rates which were across the board about 10% higher than the statewide levels of students who were meeting state expectations. And this pattern has not been the case in any year since I've been here and since 2009. So over the last 5 years, what we've seen is that there are certain subject areas or grade spans where our performance has been either very close to or at the state level. So, and there's always been some that exceed, but not everybody was exceeding. So this is the first time where we see across the board, all subject areas, all grade spans, we're generally doing 10% better than the state in terms of the proportion of our students who meet or exceed the learning standards.
So can I ask you a question? What do you attribute that jump to?
Right, that's the next thing I was going to say. So we attribute this to things like, the things that we've been doing for the past 5 years, adopting high-quality curriculum materials in various subjects, giving professional development to staff in various, not only in general teaching, but in subject-specific things sometimes, but also in general teaching skills. And we've also really enhanced our multi-tiered system of support for struggling learners. So you put all those things together, professional development for your staff, high-quality materials, support for struggling learners, and you can really boost achievement across the board. Those are the kind of things we've been working on. But even though this is great news for us, in the next series of graphs, what you're going to see is an argument to be made that we could do even better. So I'll go on to that next series. So these are always a series of graphs that's a little bit hard to look at. Again, it's tiny for people who are viewing it there, but hopefully you guys have it up on your screens.
We do.
So you can see it a little better. So on this graph, what I'm doing is looking not just at, in the previous graph, we looked just at 2024, by how much do our students exceed the state. Here we're looking at the trends of that over time, over the last 5 years. So to start, at the middle school and high school, if you're looking at the red and yellow lines on this graph, you can see that our performance in ELA relative to the state after we took a big dip during COVID has rebounded and has in fact exceeded our performance relative to the state in 2024, with the middle school being 12% above the state and the high school being 17% above the state, whereas before the pandemic, they had both been in 2019 at 6% above the state. So big growth relative to the state in middle and high school ELA. And at the elementary level, you can see our very strong pre-pandemic performance back in 2019, and then a considerable slip in our advantage over the state, but still sort of hovering around that 10% level for the last few years. And our hope is that in adopting the new ELA curriculum, which we just started, you approved last year and we started implementing this year, we'll start to see our ELA scores at the elementary again grow back toward our pre-pandemic levels. And another thing I wanted to point out in this graph, if you look at sort of the stuff at the very top, you'll notice that elementary performance in 2019 was 18% above the state. High school English performance in 2024 was 17% above the state. They're edging up toward 20%. So just keep that in mind as we go through the next graphs. So the next one is our math performance relative to the state over time. And again, there's a lot going on in this graph, so I'll just draw your attention to one line at a time. So focus first on that yellow line, which is the performance of the high school relative to the state. So you can see sort of where we started in 2019 at 14%, and we dipped a lot during COVID. Again, everybody was dipping, right? But we were dipping more. That's how to interpret that, because everybody's going down, but we used to be like this, and we're all going down, and now we're like this, right? Us and the state are much, much closer together. And you can see a big rebound in 2024, again, now exceeding our pre-pandemic performance and up at, I think, 16% now, above the state in high school mathematics. So that's good news. If you look at the red line, that is our middle school performance, right? So we started before the pandemic about 8% above the state, and then we've had, again, state's going down, we're going down, but we're going down more steeply than the state for the past few years during the pandemic. But I put in there, you can see where we introduced the new high-quality math program between years 22, in the 22-23 school year. It's not unusual, and you'll see this again in the elementary. When you introduce a new curriculum, there's often a little implementation dip that first year as people are getting, and you see that, it's twice on this graph. But then you can see now the difference between 23 and 24, that investment is starting to pay off, pay some dividends. So we hope to continue to see that growing. The blue line at the elementary, I did want to point out, especially for school committee, how that has changed over time. So in 2019, we were actually 1 point below the state in our performance. And then we hired some math coaches. And between 2019 and 2021, our performance relative to the state increased a lot. And then we introduced a new math program, and you saw a little implementation dip between 21 and 22. And then it started to take off again as people got used to the new program. And then at the end of the 2023 school year, we eliminated the 2 math coaching positions to support the implementation of that new curriculum after only 2 years of implementation. And you can see what's happened in the past year. So I'd encourage the school committee and budgeting to keep that in mind, especially as we're starting a new literacy program this year with 1 coach in place that we hired specifically to do that.
So these were not the coaches that we eliminated at the end of last year.
It wasn't the end of last year, it was the end of the year before.
Okay.
Right, those were those
Because
coaches.
last year, wasn't it, were these the coaches that coached the
Teachers.
teachers?
Yes, that's what I mean. So so it's important to have support to improve instructional practice in an area. That's why we hired them in the first place, even before we got a new curriculum. We said, look at how everything else is going. Elementary mathematics, we're performing below the state average. That shouldn't be the case. When we know that, we can perform at this level, we shouldn't have anybody performing. So that, we made the argument, we made an investment. We said, let's get some coaches in there to help elementary school teachers who are often not trained in mathematics, who are teaching, 3-4 different subjects. Let's give them some support to build their skills in teaching mathematics. So,
Do you have any data on is that drop because we lost some teachers and got some new teachers that didn't know how to teach that program? I mean, because
which drop?
The 23 to 24 math, when math coaches were eliminated.
Uh-huh.
I was just thinking, if we got a whole bunch of new teachers that don't know this program, or because if you're coaching teachers to be better teachers and to know the program, I don't think the drop shouldn't be that. It doesn't seem like it should be that precipitous, right? It seems I know it looks like that because it's, it's close
scale,
together.
right? So, yeah.
But it's still 10 points almost, right? 14 to
8.
7?
Yeah.
8, right?
Yeah, about 8 or 9, probably 9, 14 to 14 or 15 to 9.
I just was do we have anything in place to, did we, to support new teachers with this? Not even necessarily the math tutors, but is there materials or mentor teachers or something? Because it just seems you can't just keep hiring math teachers to coach teachers to teach. At some point, the teachers take accountability for that, right? It's just the new teachers that are the issue.
Right, and in that year, I will say between the 22 and 23 years, a lot of the focus of the math teachers was on getting the new teachers up to speed. They spent a lot of time in new teachers' classrooms, and then that resource is no longer available to us. This is not something that Swampscott suffered alone. I was at a conference last week, and the presenter at the conference was talking, it was about instructional leadership and instructional support, and the presenter at the conference just made the general comment about the year we all lost the coaches. So it wasn't anything that was unique to Swampscott, but in that tough budget year coming out of COVID when the ESSER funds were going away, a lot of districts said, where can we cut? And a lot of people said instructional coaches, and the point that this presenter was making is like, there's a cost to that, right? And if you really want to, you have to think about where you're putting, because instructional coaching is really a big lever we can push to improve the quality of teaching and learning in a district.
And more so than professional development, because it's.
Well, it is professional
But
development.
I'm just saying,
yeah.
because it's not like going to a lecture and coming back, it's like in the classroom.
It's right, it's ongoing, and having somebody to model and help with, like, especially when you're learning a new curriculum, 2 years isn't enough.
So
It takes 3 to 5, I'm gonna make that point later, but it takes like 3 to 5 years to really get a new curriculum solid. And you really need to support teachers through that whole process. You can't do like 1 year of PD and then say, okay, you're all set on your own. It's not gonna, you're not gonna realize the return.
Are these coaches, for the most part, full-time employees, or are they consultants?
Different districts do it differently. It's, the experiences I've had in the past and why I pushed it there, I think that people who work full-time for the district are the most effective.
Okay.
In other districts that I know of, the problem is that it's all consultants. And it's a different kind of thing. And it's harder, the other district I'm thinking of, it's harder for them to see the return on investment when they contract out.
When they what?
When they contract out.
I would imagine also for the teachers, having a peer teach coach, it would feel different than having an outside person come in and coach,
Yeah.
no? Maybe, I don't know.
I would just chime in here, relevant or not, that I think we have a very successful coaching model this year in our ELA program, and I'm curious if it's because the entire elementary staff is together and that they're doing it together, and it doesn't seem as threatening or as judgmental as I feel like the math coaches felt. It felt very judgmental from the feedback I got. And so I think it's a little bit of the personalities, and I do know I'm hearing rave reviews of this English language arts coach that is helping implement the interreading this year. So, and I do think a bit of it is having all 3 schools together.
Yeah.
Because they're all talking through it, working through it, so I'm curious to see that. I mean.
So instead of like 2-on-1, or that it's 9-on-1, 9 to 1.
But I think it's more collaborative. They have those flex spaces. They're meeting, and I think it's style too. So I think I would really love to spend some time this year watching the model that's occurring and trying to duplicate that if we go back to coaches in other areas. So I think there's a lot of factors.
I was gonna say, yeah, you guys are gonna have a little bit of a hard time because you did 2 things or more than 2 things at the same time to tease out where that came from.
That's my life story. I always do 2 things, never know which one is, yeah.
Right, but it is, I mean, it's just interesting.
But I just want to say, we see a coaching model really working well this year.
Good.
And I do like to think it's because, a little piece of it is that everybody's in the same building.
Yeah, I
And
think
so,
there's a number of factors.
Right, I do too.
Making it more successful.
Yes.
The way we marketed.
yes,
this
exactly,
position. It's not called a coach.
Right.
It's called a literacy implementation specialist.
right. I think there is
And
that,
at the same time as a new curriculum, so there was kind of like an ability for, I think, teachers to say like, yes, please give me help on implementing this new thing versus the other.
versus,
the
I don't
coaches came
stink,
first.
why are you coaching me?
Right.
I know how to
Makes sense.
teach.
Right.
So there's a lot of things.
There's a lot of factors that I
Right.
think have made it more
Thank you.
successful this year. Okay, you can go on to the next one. So this is the science, oops, we missed one there. So this is the science, and again, you see that at grades 5 and 8, the red and blue lines.
We're on the wrong page. ELA one, might want to go
Oh.
ahead.
Next one.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yep.
At grades 5 and 8, the red lines and the blue lines, we're kind of now meeting and surpassing our pre-pandemic advantage over the state, as you saw in the earlier graphs. And again, on the high school one, there's a year that it wasn't given, so that's why there's no continuous green line. But you can see that the high school is running around 20 to 25% above the state in high school biology since the new introduction of the new test and our return from the pandemic. So again, if you remember, back in the first slide, we talked about like our students at certain grade levels and certain grade spans in certain subject areas, they're able to outperform the state by about 20%. So this year, we're 10% across the board, but I think we can do better because our students can do better. They're telling us they can do better when the circumstances are right and we have the right curriculum and the you know, the right instructional techniques and the right supports, they can really do even better.
So if I recall, 2022 was also the year that our biology teacher quit a week into school, right? Yep.
I don't remember that.
I feel like that only because I think that was my kid's year in biology. But interestingly, it's still 20 points above.
Yeah. So we're doing well.
Yeah.
We're doing very well. I think we can do better.
Huh,
Yeah,
okay.
so that's part of the story. Okay. All right, so now.
When you look at comparisons, I know the state provides the comparison to the state. Do you ever line us up against the other districts that we line ourselves up to, like when we're doing negotiations? Do we ever do that? Does it matter?
It doesn't. We're talking about our students.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's.
I do with students with disabilities.
Yeah, so I'm actually
Okay.
going to turn it over to Martha now, who's going to take us through the third
Student
take.
subgroup. Okay,
Yeah,
so
one more slide.
a real positive, yep, so two more.
Hold on, guys.
I think.
Just advance it.
I'm having trouble with the mouse here, that's what's
Oh.
going on, so sorry.
It's okay. There you go.
Okay.
Nope, keep going, other way. And this one, yep. So students with disabilities did not lose ground during COVID. I think I've reported out to everyone on that. I do think that was really attributed to how hard we worked to bring our students in-person learning. But that was pretty critical, right, to not have that big drop that did happen in general education. We were able to hold them steady, which is pretty miraculous from where I'm standing. But, and this is where I do look at other school districts. I do believe that we should be at 20% for students with disabilities meeting and exceeding in English and mathematics. And there we're seeing there are some gaps that we want to take a look at. I know when Dr. Bacon came in, she talked about the Student Opportunity Act. Students with disabilities are the subgroup with the greatest performance gap. That's not atypical for our district. That is common across the whole Commonwealth. We are focusing on that subgroup in our SOA, and that's part of what we're talking to you about tonight. Despite the fact that students with disabilities remain the furthest behind compared to other subgroups, which would be students of color, multilingual learners, students from low income, coming out of the pandemic, we are in that better position because we did not lose ground during that compared to other districts. So that is a good thing. And that is, again, because we were in full-time. And thank you, Superintendent, for working with us to do that.
Yes, but it was you
I
and
do
your.
still remember how hard that was.
Yes,
we
but
did
you
it.
were relentless, and look at the results.
I will, but this is the part we were just talking about. When I do look at other comparative districts, and where I think we should be striving for is to have 20% of our students with disabilities at meet and exceeds, and we are not quite there yet. The nice thing about working with Dr. Bacon is when I see that, and actually, I did my capstone project in my first year that I had, which I don't even know how long ago now that was,
2 years ago?
2016,
3 years ago?
2016, 2017. That it was on mathematics and students with disabilities with meets and exceeds, and I think, when did you come in? When did you start?
2019.
2019. So when I looked at it, I'm like, oh, something's going on in mathematics. But then when you look at it in general education, we look, oh, something's going in mathematics for everybody. And that is really, really important because I have to know what lever am I going to push. Is this a special education issue? And at that time, we realized, well, it was not. It was actually a general education issue because as general education goes, so will our students with disabilities. So our first, one of our major goals in the SOA is we want to continue to close the gap between our students with disabilities and all of our students. But there is a gap. All right. So if you go to the next slide, kind of take a look at how many students with disabilities are at meets and exceeds. And you can kind of look at the elementary level in 2019, like we do see a drop with the pandemic. We're at 19% right now, but that is close to the 20, and that's really where we want to be. We'd like to get higher, but I always want to make sure we're hitting that 20% threshold. If you look at the middle school, we're actually consistently been low. And so there I know is another lever I've got to take a look at. Why is that? Go back to the high school, we're kind of where we would want to be. Probably could go higher, but right above that 20% threshold.
Elementary got to 30% with math, again, likely attributed to the new curriculum, which is great. So as gen ed went, so did special education. Again, middle school's holding lower, so I know that's where my lever that I need to push. And then high school, again, ELA looked okay. Math is another area of need at the high school. Algebra and geometry, those core, and it's, again, likely also attributed to some general education curriculum issues that we have to look at the high school. So it's important to note that why do we do this? Well, I need to know, where's my focus need to go? And if you kind of think about it at the middle school, elementary's had a lot of focus on their curriculum. High school gets a lot of focus on the curriculum. In middle school, we've got the new math curriculum, but they have not had the benefit of math implementation specialists. They are going to be getting a new ELA curriculum, which is good, but I feel like they haven't had some of the attention, the middle child maybe, that they deserve. And we're also investing in, I know you're going to talk about it, but I always feel like I'm not going to give you bad news to tell you that we're not doing anything about it. We're investing in co-teaching this year, professional development for our special educators and our general educators, to really see if we can get that number up to where it should be, because it should be at 20%, and it's lower. So that's something we're going to look at.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Do these numbers include those students who are outplaced yet take the MCAS, and those MCAS scores are tied to Swampscott?
That, I don't know. What do you?
I can't.
I know that they're reported out separately in the, when I get the report, but to be,
that might completely change your data.
Yeah.
There's not many students that we have that actually would impact that.
Okay.
And to be honest with you, their scores, most of them would be where I would want them to be also. So I don't think that would be the outlier. I mean, one thing we do that we have the state does want us to keep this low number extraordinarily low, which is the alternative assessment.
Right.
And we really do encourage all of our students to take the MCAS, and it's pretty rare, so that's also not an indicator. And 20% really is the mark that we're looking for, and we're above it in some of the areas, but we're just too low at the middle school. There's no reason for that, because those same students, then when they get to high school, come back up, and those were the same students that were also in elementary that were above 20%. So it's not a cohort issue, right? There's just something that's depressing it down.
And the data for this particular chart comes from the school level reports, which do not include the kids who are outpaced.
Great, okay, thank you. I was curious more than anything
So
else.
remind me again, I know that this is what, when we talk about closing the achievement gap, that it includes a much bigger group of kids. So they're not just kids with disabilities. Are we talking about kids with disabilities?
Yes.
Or are we also talking about, kids who are English language learners?
So in this case, this is students with disabilities. Now, that doesn't mean either are students with disabilities who are also multilingual learners. But our number of students who are multilingual learners is small also. So compared to this number of students, we have 500 students on IEPs currently, so it's a big group of students.
Okay.
But it's good for us to look at, because we need to see where are our areas of opportunity. And right now, I know where it is. It's at the middle school, and it's at the high school for math. Okay. So that's where we have to focus our attention, which is good. That's why we do this. And the growth will happen if, again, we invest in good curriculum and those interventionists. I know that, that is the area where we end up cutting, but in a way, it comes back. The money gets spent just in a different area.
Yeah, it's like it's easy to look.
Special education, which actually is more costly than it would be on the front end.
Yeah, so it's easy to say, well, they're not student facing, so it has to go. But in fact, it's
education has really changed. I mean, the neurological, the understanding of the brain and the neurological developments, the understanding of research and evidence-based practices. This is not the same profession that it was, 10, 20 years ago. And and that is to me the greatest thing about education is every single day I can do it differently and do it better. That's also the hardest thing about education. I will never, ever be able to say, I got it all down. Never. So that kind of question, I think, Suzanne, maybe you said about, within 2 years we should have it down. That will never happen. there is new information coming to us all the time about different ways that we have to work with students and to develop them. So every teacher we have here, doesn't matter how long we've been teaching, can use professional development always, all of us. And that's the field. It's a great field, but it's hard. It's hard. You're never going to be able to say, I've learned it all. So, but a good piece about doing this with Dr. Bacon is, like I said, is it a special education issue? Is it a general education issue? Where do we invest? And so that's why it's not as important for that single student. MCAS is important to look about the health and wellness of the district as a whole. That's why I like it. So, do you want to do?
Okay, I think we're on to the next.
Did I miss anything that you
No.
wanted to?
No, I think we're good.
To talk about? You did mention though, the high school, you're only testing one grade.
Right.
So that does mean the numbers, it's a little, the
More
sample.
volatile, right,
Yeah, the
yes.
sample is small, so it is a little more volatile.
Yeah, so like at the high school, we've seen the drop of from 18 to 10
Yeah.
over this 5-year period. But like each student at the high school that takes the math MCAS is worth 3 or 4%. So, because there's just so few of them, because you're only
Right.
testing one grade. Right, so it's very small.
But we'd expect to get to 20. I want to be over 20. Those are some of our when I look at our comparative districts who are at 20, Marblehead, Linfield, they're at 20. I look at Danvers and Beverly, we're closer to them. I do feel like there's probably another cofactor in there, and it's our we have a greater socioeconomic increase. There's an increased number of students who are considered low socioeconomic in Swampscott than Marblehead or Linfield, and that could be one of the players that's lowering us a little. All the research, all the investment that I can do in pre-K, Head Start, and everything that we do, we know that all those gains are lost by 6th grade, depending upon your economic status, right? So that is a huge impact for students, for language that they're exposed to, and opportunities that they have, and so that's something we always have to be really thinking about.
So one of the things that came up in Jason's interview a week ago, 2 weeks ago, whenever that was about, he was talking specifically about math in the middle school and the fact that there are more kids now taking algebra than there have been in the past. And so that this is a cohort of kids who are not
Practicing for the test.
practicing
Right.
what's on the test.
Right.
So I get, my question is, I extrapolate that and I look at your students who are special ed students and thinking, are you looking for, how do I say this? How important is it to do this? Are they excelling in other ways that just aren't reflected in MCAS? I mean, I know that the state is saying close the gap.
Well, MCAS is important in that it's a universally given assessment that the entire state takes,
Yeah.
right? So it helps eliminate variables that might be at play somewhere else. It is, though, one assessment. So yes, when you look at it from that one student's perspective, it is not the only measure that I would look at. So MCAS to me is important for the global picture, not as critical for the single child's picture, if that makes sense.
Yep, it does.
But because what other measure we do have iReady, which is fabulous and does
tracks
correlate.
MCAS, it's a huge
Because-
correlation.
It
Because
correlates
if you're
with
looking
it
at
too.
it, if you're looking at it the way that you are, then it becomes about who we are as a district in terms of how do we educate and not your.
Well, more like how am I going to allocate the resources of the district? Like, we have to be very critical about what am I going to ask you for money for? What are we going to, what are we going to put forward? And so this helps me understand, okay, where is my focus need? Where does it need to go? And my attention has to be at the middle school and the high school math. Those are the two areas, right? So we're not, that's important. We have a finite amount of money. We want to make sure we're allocating it to get a difference. So it's helpful, but it is one measure. So on the student micro level, it is one measure. On the global, and it's something that every district's giving, and everybody went through COVID. How do we do, right? It's not like.
And everybody has kids who come to
Right.
school sick that day.
Yes.
And everybody,
Yeah.
everybody has those special
Right, circumstances.
circumstances.
So it is helpful for those big picture items that especially for Dr. Bacon's position. A new curriculum, that's huge, right? Where do we put our attention? So it's helpful for that.
So can I
But on
just
the
ask,
good thing, things are starting to improve.
before we move off of this
Yeah.
slide, you talked about trying to get to the 20% in
Yeah.
some of these categories. Is there a time frame you have in mind, or just,
Well, our Student Opportunity Act, yeah, is-
Correct, 3 years.
and my goal
2027,
for,
yeah.
I think my goal for the superintendent, I had to put my goal in there, and that is my goal, my goal
Personal
for,
goal.
for my student learning goal for being evaluated against, is to get us there.
Do we have a goal like that for our our general ed kids?
Again, I would say that we should be striving toward getting all our kids to be 20% above the state across all grade levels and across all subject areas.
That's
And
great.
mine's not
goal.
above the state, mine's to get to 20% of our students who are meets and exceeds.
Right,
So,
yeah.
a little different, but I want us going above the state. We can also look how we're performing against the state too. We actually perform fairly similar to the state with students with disability.
Interesting.
Okay, if you want to go ahead. So the next slide is really just a summary of things we've already communicated to. So I know we're getting long here, so maybe I'll just skip over this. You can sort of read it. But we've made all these points in what we've just said. So maybe we'll just go ahead. And then as Martha said, like, what are we doing about all this? So one of the things is we are implementing this new K-4 literacy curriculum with coaching support. We're hoping that the 5th grade adopts that curriculum for next year to start to work into the middle school. Martha mentioned expanding professional development on co-teaching, which is the major model we use at the middle and high school to support the success of our students with disabilities and our multilingual learners. And we're beginning to work with the middle school English department and the high school math department to investigate high-quality curriculum materials and see if we can move those levers. And then, again, I would just reiterate a recommendation for the building leadership that, our office doesn't really have a whole ton of input on, but to make sure that the new math programs are really being implemented with fidelity. Because we haven't been giving them the professional development that I think has really been necessary, and that the bell schedules need to provide enough time for mathematics instruction. So that's a challenge as well, for building leadership to keep in mind. Okay, and then we were going to pause for questions on this section before we move on to the accountability, which I promise will be quicker. Are you satisfied with your MCAS questions? We'll move ahead.
I do have a general MCAS question. I want to wait till the end.
Okay,
That's my
your choice. Okay, so if we move ahead to accountability, and you can just go straight to the second slide. One more slide. So this new accountability system that was introduced in 2018, it's not just about MCAS. There's a couple measures around MCAS. MCAS performance, which is how many kids are meeting or exceeding the standard. MCAS growth, how much are they growing compared to academically similar peers. It also considers the rates at which our students complete high school, the rates at which they progress toward English language proficiency for our multilingual learners, our chronic absenteeism rates, and our completion of advanced coursework. So those are all things that get considered in this formula that DESE has for their accountability. So we consider those 6 measures. We consider them for all students, for our lowest performing 25% of students, and we consider those 2 things separately for the K-8 grades and the high school grades. So there's a lot of numbers in this system. And ultimately, there's a weighted average formula, and it all boils down to one number at the end, which is your performance toward your target goal. So each year they set targets for improvement for us in all of these measures at all of those levels for all of our subgroups, and we either, how much do we progress toward those targets. So if you move to the next slide, this shows you our annual progress toward targets for the last few years since we've had this new system. So you can see that in 2024, as a district, over all those measures and all those subgroups, we received a performance percentage of 71%, right? We were 71% of the way there toward all our targets. And so that's great, and you can see that that's the highest we've ever done since they introduced this new system, our performance in 2024. Do you have any water?
I do, but I don't know. Do you want to go? Want me to? You can definitely have some of my sharing my germs. Yes, you
I
can.
hate when that happens.
No, I got one right here.
Tickle.
Oh, you got
That's
one?
It's all right, John, I heard.
No, take your ticket. Want me to talk for a minute? so
I'm
you
not
can-
sick, yeah.
Like you talk, you talk far more.
No, you get the
eloquently on
please.
this.
I know.
Okay, just kidding.
This is a
Tickle in my
complicated, a whole lot of information
Okay,
into one
yeah.
number.
And so, overall, now that we're in like this cycle again, because again, it was suspended during MCAS, what they do is they do a weighted average of your last 2 years, which is our accountability percentage of 62% overall for this accountability year, which is an average of not a straight average, but a weighted average of the 47 and 71. And you can see then the ratings we've received based on our accountability percentages. And this year, we made it into the substantial progress towards target category, which is, again, the highest that we've performed since this new system was introduced. And when you get to 62 puts us in that substantial progress. If that weighted 2-year average had been 75, we would have been in, met our targets. So that's what we're ultimately aiming for. Can you go to the next slide? And this is the question that you were asking, Ms. O'Connor, a little while ago about other subgroups of students. So you can see that over the last 2 years, we've improved our performance against all these measures, both for all students overall and for our high-need students, which includes our students with disabilities, our low-income students, and our English language learners, all taken as one group. So we're pleased with those results. The things that, when I looked in detail at the data, there's a link on the previous slide if you ever want to go investigate it. When I looked about, so what are the levers? Where have we been particularly successful in the past year in terms of our improvement? So the main drivers have been our great improvement in chronic absenteeism, particularly at the high school, which exceeded their improvement performance target for chronic absenteeism in 2024. We also, another big driver of this was advanced course taking at the high school, specifically by our high-need students. That also exceeded the target that DESE had set for us in terms of our achievement. Overall academic performance at the high school exceeded our targets, as well as the large gains by our high-need subgroup at the highest, compared to all students over all the indicators that were in there. So,
And they were recognized, and I had mentioned that a few meetings back, that they had been recognized with a big certificate for.
right, yeah. So the high school was a big driver in our very good performance in the accountability system over the past year. And then finally, one more slide. So we are closing those gaps, particularly at the high school with our high-need students, so we have some good evidence for that. And then the accountability percentiles for each individual school are listed here from last year again, and you can see, same thing with the pattern the year before, that there really was good reason to consolidate those 3 elementary schools to provide an equitable educational experience to all our Swampscott students. So that's it. So if you have any questions about the accountability or any other questions, we'd be happy to answer them.
It's going to be fascinating watching data going from 3 elementary schools, and especially those kids who were maybe displaced for a year. And then a couple of years from now, looking at the data where every, K-4 is together. Mm-hmm. That's going to be a fascinating deep dive into all this. And then for me, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask about MCAS. Mm-hmm. And I have a question for both of you. I'll start with you, Dr. Bacon. Where do you think this will go? As far as what is being put out there from the legislature, where do you think MCAS goes in this state?
Well, MCAS itself, and having a metric to measure student progress,
right,
and a metric to hold districts accountable for performing well for their students, that's federal. Mm-hmm. So if the federal legislation goes away, then that'll be a state discussion. But Massachusetts, as you all know, Massachusetts is the highest performing state in education in the country.
Right.
Massachusetts seems to have an extremely strong commitment to pursuing that for our students.
Right.
And so I would think that the Department of Education, if it continues within Massachusetts, if it continues to function as it has,
right,
they will maintain their commitment to doing the, really pushing districts to do the best we can for our students. And you can't know if you're doing the best if you have no way to measure how students are doing. So there'll be some sort of measurement that will enable the state to hold us accountable as districts for how we're doing with our students, I would imagine.
Great.
Even if the federal government decides not to care about it anymore.
Right. Very well stated. And Ms. Raymond, I will pass on the question I was going to ask you.
So actually, just a quick follow-up to what Glenn said. So that recent ballot initiative, that won't impact anything you guys have been covering here, right?
No, that only has to do with, right now, the state requires all students to pass MCAS in order to receive a high school diploma. They can either pass it in the traditional way by taking the MCAS exam, or if for some reason that's not the best way to demonstrate what they know, they can do a portfolio of evidence to say that they've met the MCAS, the state standards, even though they're not able to show it through the MCAS exam. So there's always been those two routes. And the only thing that was voted on was whether to continue to have that as a graduation requirement statewide. And that initiative succeeded.
So that seems like it's also in line with how you approach MCAS anyway, that it really is about resources and about how we are looking at things big picture and not about individual kids.
Yes, except for I think one of the reasons MCAS did develop originally was that we were graduating students who did not have the skills that people thought they had with that diploma in hand, and it was like another area of accountability for the district and for that student. I do think there are other ways to prove that, right, which Dr. Bacon kind of talked about. So I guess now that I think that measure, it passed, like it's valid today. So our current graduates will not have to have passed MCAS to get their diploma. But I do think that doesn't mean that we can't also have what we think that diploma means, and that there's different ways to demonstrate your skill set. So but the part about MCAS or iReady is that they're universally given tools. There's an equity issue when we leave it up to just a person. And that part's hard unless you have a really systematic, structured way that that person is going to go about it, if that makes sense. So if we leave it up to a one person or one teacher to say, hello, do you believe that this student has met all the requirements of a graduate, whatever that may be, ELA, math, science, civics. But what is that measure? How is that person evaluating that? And that's where we have to be clear. What is the rubric? What are those measures? What is the standard? We have to figure out what that is. MCAS was just the one thing that people universally gave.
Any other thoughts and comments?
Right, no, thank you so much for the
Thank you
presentation.
so much.
I actually have a question for you, Superintendent. The accountability measures, are those worked into the way that you review your staff?
It hasn't been tied to that.
Ms. Raymond was saying that, like in her, that you've got, bringing these kids to 20%, it is, chronic absenteeism, something that, are there measures that you've set for our leaders that they hit it,
No, everyone, it's part of the plan that we're working on. Chronic absenteeism, family engagement, all of those things are priorities for the district, but we're not connecting them to teachers directly.
No, not teachers, I mean leadership.
Oh, leadership, yes. They're all goals and priorities for us that we're working on.
Okay.
Yep. Appreciate it, ladies. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I believe we had Mr. Casper on Zoom, so if we could let him in, or at least let him speak. The next two items on the agenda are just updates. There's no votes necessary tonight. So I think he just needs to be allowed to speak as a participant.
I think Mr. Toulette's going to handle the dirty work there.
Oh, he's got his hand raised.
There we go.
So we just say view. There we go.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Sure.
Thank you, Superintendent. Yes, we're going to speak briefly on two items tonight. They're not likely looking for a vote, just with where they are in their process, but we did have them on the agenda, so figured it would be a good idea to give a brief update and allow discussion if desired, or answer any questions. The first is an MOU for the use of the Clark building, the main Clark building, not the portables, by the town. We've been working on this MOU to allow the town to use the building likely for recreation and potentially some senior center and other potential town activities in the short term. The initial MOU is likely to track this fiscal year, and then there would be considerations for future years. One of the critical pieces of this is for the school district to retain control over the building long-term, with unknowns in the future with the middle school and, likely need for swing space. So this MOU, again, we've been working on it. It's in place. The select board met on it last night, and they didn't take a vote, so they didn't take action on it. They had some additional things that they're going to be working through on their end. So we think it's probably most prudent to let their process play out a little bit more prior to the school committee taking action. So that's why we've decided to not recommend a vote tonight. But if there are any questions on that, I'd be happy to answer them.
I watched last night's meeting, and I was interested, particularly Mr. Thompson said something about, why not just leave it as it is and let the schools, continue to manage it, and appreciate the fact that, I don't remember who it was who brought it up, but said, like, we don't want to be in the business of renting out property. I think that it's really important that our superintendent and her staff do what they do best, which is educate. So the idea that we would come to an agreement where they would take over it makes all the sense in the world from an educational standpoint.
Okay.
In my opinion.
And your opinion is a valid opinion.
As long as it's temporary.
Right.
As long as it's temporary.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, look, I trust that, like, when we went through the process with the new elementary school, that the teams come together and figure out what's
For sure.
more than anything else financially responsible for take care of. So.
Any other questions, comments from anybody?
No.
Okay.
Next item on the agenda is the Clark.
Thank you, Max.
The Big Blue Bargains, Max,
Oops,
correct?
Yes.
Yes. So again, this is at the Clark property as well. This time the portables. Big Blue Bargains, an organization that previously ran a thrift store out of the middle school, and then at some other locations in Swampscott, has expressed an interest in utilizing the Clark portables. We think this is a good opportunity both for them, for the town, and for the school district. We're simply still negotiating the agreement at this point. Making some good progress. Just we did think this iteration, just with how the last process went at the middle school with them, it would be best just to have a more formalized agreement, understanding the responsibilities of the parties. So we're productively working through that. We thought it might be ready for tonight, but it's still in process, and there's no reason to rush it. So we'll keep working diligently on that. Finalize that, I think, shortly and bring it to a vote, but still thought it would be good just to bring that up. I think the board's likely aware of this developing item, but again, if there's any questions relative to that, we'd be happy to answer them.
Yeah, I just want to chime in that we all know Big Blue Bargains over the years has given a significant amount of money, donated a significant amount of money to the schools, and we do know that the middle school space was less than conducive to what they were running, and for the last several years, we've been trying to find a spot to bring them back into the schools. And when you talk about the portables, having taught in those portables for probably 11 years,
it's almost a perfect setup. They pull right up, you know, there's a separate entrance, they're not going into a school building. It really is a great space, it's air-conditioned.
Accessible.
Higher visibility.
It's
Yes.
handicap accessible with a ramp.
It's got a bathroom.
So,
Yeah.
it's got two
Yeah.
handicap bathrooms, so I feel like, this is a real win, because I think we've been villainized a little bit that we don't support them, and we do, but the priority has always been student needs and student space. And so this is another opportunity to really partner with the town, but partner with an organization that has done a lot for the schools. And so I'm excited by the opportunity to partner with them and appreciate Max's work on this agreement.
Superintendent, do you think that it's valuable to have a school committee person as part of that relationship, or do you think it makes more sense to keep that working through the superintendent's office and your business office?
I don't think there's anything wrong with having a liaison from the school committee to,
I mean, do you think it would bring value for you?
definitely. Currently, Mr. Casper's handling this, and so I haven't had that involvement, but, and I don't know, Mr. Casper, how you feel about that, if you feel like you can manage this, and he's just brought it to me, so I haven't had, my time hasn't been taken by that. He's taking it on. But I'm really excited by,
Because I think that, like, in the past, I think that we've sort of stayed away from it because it was funding the PTOs, PTAs, PTOs, PTFs, which we don't have oversight of.
right, so I say keep the relationships the way they are right now. As it develops, if there's a need, certainly knowing there's a willingness from the committee, we can involve you, but at this time, I think we'll keep it as it is. I appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Casper.
You're welcome.
Thank you,
Have a great
Max.
night.
And then, as we continue through the superintendent's report, we have our Assistant Superintendent of Finance, giving the first quarter FY25 budget update memo.
Thank you. So, as usual, I like to provide the committee quarterly with an update on our projections and where we stand with the budget. I'm grateful that this year, as we're looking at the first quarter projection, we're not in the same place we were last year. Things are looking a little bit better for us overall. That being said, while I'm not projecting a deficit so early on in the fiscal year, the amount that I'm projecting that will be under budget is less than $10,000. So it's still tight and something that we are closely managing, but we're not in that same position that we were in last year. So that is good news. We do have a few out-of-district placements that are lingering out there, not finalized, and should they come down the pipeline, those would be likely coming eventually out of the Special Education Reserve Fund, because we have fully committed our operating budget, we've fully committed our circuit breaker and our IDEA funds thus far. So that's really that would be the other funding source to fund those should they come to fruition. So the Administration Cost Center is projected to finish under budget by about $35,000. Really, the driver of that is we have 2 times throughout the year with which lane changes are approved. They're at the beginning of the year and then in February. So when we budget for the next fiscal year, we build in what we think might happen for lane changes. And so you never quite know exactly what actually will get approved and completed. So right now we have a little bit of money still in that account. The district-wide cost center is projected to finish under budget by $25,000. There's really no significant one thing that's really driving this. It's just a lot of little different accounts that right now we're projecting to finish under. General education is projected to finish under budget by $162,000. As you know, we have kind of a different model this year for SES as it relates to the administration team with 1 principal, 1 assistant principal, and a part-time dean of students. And so that is some of the cost savings there, as well as we've had some retirements and we have some cost savings as a result of those retirements. School facilities is projected to finish under budget by about $179,000. This likely will change, just because there's expenditures for small repairs and things like that that come about. I am pleased to say that thus far, the expenses related to facilities at the new elementary school are tracking a little bit under what the facilities director had anticipated. So that is definitely good news. That being said, even as we look to budget for FY26, it's going to be really hard for us to project utility costs because we didn't take the utilities over until end of August. They were being paid by the construction company, so we're missing summer months, and the building is just starting to ramp up. So this is still going to be a little bit of a guessing game for us for the next budget cycle. And then special education is projected to finish over budget by about $400,000. We've had to add additional staff due to student needs, as well as some of the savings that we thought we'd have with our in-district transportation. There were certain needs with students that they couldn't be on the big bus. We had to have a van. But we've had to add ABA tutors, additional ESPs. We did restore a special education teacher here at the high school. Again, it's all student need driven. And then we have a job coach here that is supporting program at the high school. So overall, like I said, much more positive than we were last year.
For sure.
Which is great, but still running fairly tight.
So the sweeps where we're under, does that get funneled into the special education?
At the end of the year, it will, if necessary.
It would be good if we, I mean, I know you track that kind of thing, but it's interesting because, like, I look at that and I see, a $35,000 savings in administration costs, and you think, well, that would be great if we could roll that into, like, a stabilization fund for, for like things, as opposed to taking out of general funds to pay special education that we knew were going to be out and away. It's just frustrating.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Next item is also under the Assistant Superintendent of Finance, Student Activities Memo. I learned something new with this.
So I first want to just thank Janet Higgins. She works in the business office. She's our grants and financial reporting accountant. She started not this recent June before. And this has been something she's been working on quite literally since she started. It's been quite the monumental effort to really reconcile our student activity accounts, clean them up, get people trained up, work with town hall. And she spent a lot of time, and we're finally in a good space with our student activity accounts. We've transitioned to a new Quicken as well too. And now that the elementary schools are consolidated, that's also helping improve this process. One thing which I don't know if this committee has done in the past, but is required by law, is you are every year supposed to set the checking account limits for all of the checking accounts.
We've never
done that.
That's what I learned.
That's the second thing we've learned tonight about we didn't know what we were doing.
So that's my main purpose for putting this memo together and coming before you, is to make sure that you do that this year, and we'll continue to make sure we do that every year. So the checking account limit I'm suggesting for the high school is $50,000, middle school $40,000, elementary school is $15,000. And this is really in line with kind of what other districts have for limits and based off how much money flows in and out. There's not as much activity at the elementary school. At the high school, there's all kinds of senior activities and a lot more going on, so they need to have a much higher checking account limit. The other piece of this is it's not required by law, but it is just good practice, if nothing else, to recognize which accounts we need to have open or remain open, and those accounts with which we need to close.
But I've never seen a list of these accounts ever in one place.
I mean, like that, we still have a class of 1999 account.
Yes.
So is there money in some of these
Yeah,
accounts?
Yes.
that's my question.
So there is, and so what happens with non-class accounts, if it's a student activity that has ceased to exist and has been, and these have disbanded quite some time ago, the money then goes into, every school has a principal's account. And so Superintendent Angelakis talked about how we have ways to give scholarships. And so that is how we pay for those scholarships when students need financial assistance for field trips. And so some of these are very, like $50, $30. I mean, there's not very large balances in these, but there's all these small balances that we need to close and move into that account.
Could I ask then, could you, for the next meeting, give us this list, but the balance of the account, and then if you could, the last time it was used?
Sure.
Because just to,
The
Amy, your point,
1999.
the 19, and I see like SAD, student against drunk driving, that something doesn't exist any longer.
I mean, do you need all of them or just like a?
No,
Like
all- all
like a
of-
total.
I'd like to get, well, both. I'd like to see what,
Really?
well, I mean, if we have all these accounts open, right, and you're gonna close all these, so some of these accounts are,
So would you just want the total amount of the accounts closed?
Yeah,
Do you-
like whatever we're
Oh, that's
sweeping.
fine. What-
Yeah,
whatever's-
like whatever
I
we're
mean, just
sweeping.
taking the total of the high school closed accounts
Right.
and middle school closed account, that might be helpful.
I mean, personally, the Harry Potter Alliance, I'm all in for that.
Well,
I'm curious.
I don't even
just
know
make
what
it
I
happen
am that
magic.
girl, I don't know what some of these are. This is an amazing list, and I did learn that this is best practice because
Wow.
in my 11 years, we've never brought it to you, so.
But all the class funds that are left, those.
So that's
you
a-
can use that.
Yeah, what about?
So that's a little bit different process. And actually, your school committee policy speaks to that.
All right, excellent.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
What does our policy happen to say?
So, and we're changing the process a little bit this year, so we hopefully don't run into this where we have these old accounts. But within 3 years, you send a letter to the treasurer of, if it's still sitting.
Right.
I mean, technically, once they graduate, the treasurer of the school, the class of whatever, should be withdrawing those funds and putting it into a class of
Right,
their own bank account.
Right.
Right, and typically they're used for reunions. In this case, we have some very old ones. We have no idea if letters were ever sent. They're supposed to be sent. We're trying to track down these people and at least sending the letters, notifying them that it's gone past the 3 years. If we don't hear from them by X date, then at that point, it reverts back to the school and it would go back into that principal's account.
Oh, great.
Could we send that letter and ask them if they would like to donate it into that account?
That's a great question.
Rather than saying,
Yeah, we
like,
certainly,
take
yeah.
it and take it or not, just say, like,
But as a former class officer, you have reunions,
I get it.
so.
But as a former student, I know I'm happy to pay for my own drinks. So, like, if
That's a
know,
really
Doesn't
great-
hurt to
that's a
ask.
great
yeah, like
point. Right.
just to say,
Right.
like it's a nice small way, like obviously, Joe Dulette's class made this gargantuan gift to us. That's wonderful, and this might be just another way to start saying, great way to give back.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
And
we
if
certainly-
they've forgotten about it and
Yeah,
haven't.
especially
pulled
they
it
don't
out.
wanna
don't
deal
even know
with the
they have
paperwork,
it.
It's
yeah.
true.
And it's like $50.
No, I know,
Yeah.
I'm teasing you.
Some of the class funds might be.
I was gonna say, do they have large balances in them, any of them?
There are a couple, maybe, large being a couple thousand,
Oh,
nothing,
I mean, but like, that's enough to send a
That's
kid to
one person to
Florida.
Florida.
sure, absolutely, yeah. We can certainly add that to the letter. And so the change in the process this year is the letter is also going to be handed to the treasurer of the class in the fall, so that they know what the process is, so that, we're not,
We're not doing this again in 10 years.
right, and just so that they're aware as they're going into their senior year, if they want the funds, then, they need to set up a bank account. and all
Or
those things.
what better way to start being charitable than to
Or
donate
that.
it?
They could do that.
I love it, Amy, I love it.
Yeah, so do I.
So there are some votes requested on the second page?
So,
Third
yes,
page,
I mean,
actually.
like I said, the one vote I do need you to make is the checking account limits. And then I do just ask that you don't have to name all these counts, but it would be nice for you to approve as listed in the memo, the opening and closing of the accounts as listed.
I have a question. So the student activity checking accounts, so does that mean that each individual account, so like the boosters, that doesn't get higher than $50,000? Or is this, I'm confused.
So these are called sub-accounts, and that we keep track of this in Quicken. But there is one checking account for the high school, all student activity.
Oh, okay, so like when I go and I pay my AP exams, that goes into the student account, or maybe that's a bad example. When I go to pay for the
Field trip.
powder puff,
Right.
that goes into the high school checking account.
It first goes into the savings account.
Okay.
And then they transfer the money from the savings account into our checking account. What this allows, though, is that for us always to have a balance in that checking account. So especially, it's especially important at the high school, as they're just writing all these checks.
Yeah.
The town hall isn't having to constantly be transferring the money from the savings to the checking, savings to the checking. So there's two different accounts associated, but the checking account is where we write the checks for.
So is it a limit, or is it a minimum?
It's the limit.
Sounds like a balance minimum.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, it sounds like a balance that has to be
Right.
maintained.
Yeah.
Correct.
50,000.
In an ideal world, right? I mean,
Yeah,
obviously,
that
there'll be.
if there isn't the money, that we're not gonna put money into it.
Correct.
But that,
And it protects us from bouncing checks.
Yeah.
Which unfortunately has happened in the past and creates problems for town hall, so,
well, it's expensive.
yes.
Plus also to manage pushing money back and forth all the time. Someone has to
Right.
do it.
Right.
Right, like.
And so I envision they'll likely periodic, whether it's monthly, I'm not gonna prescribe to them how
Yeah.
they're doing it, whether it's every 2 weeks or monthly. They'll make sure they're moving enough money so that we have,
We
That
have
balance
money to
Right.
write checks off of.
I was thinking
available.
kind of the same thing, that, you couldn't write a check bigger than 50,000. That's
No.
when I saw limit, that's what I
Right.
first thought.
Right.
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
yeah.
All right, so
absolutely.
would you like us to vote then?
Please,
All right, so we're gonna
Whenever you're
we'll do it in 2 stages. Can someone please make a motion for the school committee to set the limit for the 2024-2025 school year as follows in checking accounts, total checking accounts, by the way? High school, 50,000, middle school, 40,000, and the elementary school, 15,000.
I'll make the motion.
Will someone second to that motion?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
No, I have some, so this is for just 2024?
every year you have to
We have
vote.
to do
Oh,
this
so,
every
okay.
Yeah.
So I'll be back again next year.
Okay,
For the 24-25 school year.
okay,
Yep.
all right. I think that's all my questions.
I know,
It's just, this is a lot to take in since we've never,
we can
Well,
certainly,
now it's gonna be routine business. Like
Right.
you said.
Yeah, it's-
Right.
Yeah.
It's gonna be
Yeah.
routine
Next year,
business.
you'll say, you know what, we
Yeah.
needed a little
No, it's-
more, or whatever.
it's kind of like town meeting when, let's say you vote to approve, like with the
Like
recreation
free ca-
department.
like the
Yeah.
Yeah,
okay,
cash
Yeah.
form.
okay.
yeah.
Okay, then,
All in favor? Anyone opposed? It passes unanimously. And I'll also ask for a vote of the school committee to approve each student activity, hold on, what's the second one you want me to do? I'm sorry.
Just vote to approve the opening and closing of the student.
There we go, I was
activity
reading the
accounts
wrong line, okay.
As described in the above
Thank you.
memo.
Can I have someone make a motion, please, to approve the opening, those accounts to remain open and those accounts to close as is dictated in this memo?
I will make the motion.
Okay, will someone second, please?
Second.
All in favor? All opposed? And unfortunately, we all passed, but the Harry Potter Alliance account
It's going away.
will go away. I do want to point out, not to make everybody feel old, that at the elementary school, there is an account for the class of 20 37.
Wow.
Just to throw that out there. And yes, I know each and every one of us here is doing that math. Okay, anything else?
No, that completes
Ms.
my.
Daw, does that mean, are there checking account fees associated with each one of those subs, or no? Did I just ask that 2 minutes ago?
No.
There's
No.
no fees.
Okay, so it's not like for, okay, because it's really just one account.
It's one account for the whole school.
Okay.
That feeds in. Yeah. Okay. All right. I do not have any general comments. Anything on a subcommittee point of view, policy, anything to chat about?
Just, I think just a general update, I think the next agenda should have the vote for the cell phone policy.
On the 21st, sure.
Excellent.
Can I ask that we link it on the agenda so that we
Yes.
can all access it? Thanks.
Great.
And I guess just the second thing is, Suzanne and I are going to begin kind of scoping out which policies need updating and set a schedule to do that, and pull in the appropriate people as needed.
Great.
So you've got the public comment policy.
Yeah,
There's a whole bunch of policies.
there's a lot of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I bet, just
Right.
only because I was part of that conference call.
Yeah, yeah, no, maybe we'll push
We'll
that one
we'll
out.
move that to the top of the list.
Oh, yeah.
All right, anything else, John? Is that it?
That's it.
Can I just, I'm sorry to go back, I did receive an email, just a reminder to us in the community that Swampscott High School is playing Marblehead High School on Wednesday evening before Thanksgiving. Tickets are now available, please come out and support your community, your players. and
At
everything.
How do you
Fenway.
get
At
tickets?
Fenway.
Yeah, how do you get those tickets?
It is online, that I'm happy to send you the link.
Thank you.
You are welcome.
Maybe you could also announce the girls.
Yes.
Flag
And
football.
The flag football game, right, as you have taught me. The flag football game will be on, I'm assuming it's a Sunday?
It's a Saturday.
Saturday, November 23rd, here in Swampscott.
Mhm.
It's a great take, it's a lot of fun. Come on out, we'll continue to remind
fundraiser.
you of that. Okay, we do have a few attendees. Anyone would like to chat, say hello? Tell us your thoughts, your opinions of anything. Public comment. I see no hands raised. We will then go to actions and votes on a couple of donations. Okay, the first one is the Packer family. Ecology School Field Trip Scholarship. Okay, the individual submitting the form is Heather Everett. And it is a donation of the Packer family. They reside in Swampscott. They are making a donation of $400, the donation for other students to attend the ecology school, scholarship to help with the cost of the trip for those requiring financial assistance. That is incredibly generous of you, the Packer family. Will someone make a motion to accept the donation?
I'll make the motion.
Someone second?
Second?
All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Again, thank you to the Packer family. That is incredibly generous of you. Next, we have I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly, the Noller family, also of Swampscott. They are making a $200 donation towards sixth grade field trip, also at the ecology school. Again, the scholarship for students to attend the ecology school who require financial assistance. Thank you to the Noller family. Again, that is incredibly generous of you. Thank you. Can someone please make a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Someone second?
A second.
All in favor? Aye. Passes unanimously again to both the Noller and the Packer family. That is incredibly generous.
So I just want to point out, this ecology school field trip happened.
Yes, it did.
Yes,
And
thank you.
it is beautifully documented on social media. They were there during the Aurora Borealis.
Oh,
Check it out.
wow.
Oh, the photos are incredible.
Fabulous.
Wow, that's great.
Don't have to go to Iceland. They had a point of view.
Yep. Amazing.
Okay. So now, I have to turn the page, sorry, hold on. Consent agenda. You know what, excuse me, I missed this on the other page. We did have on the agenda to vote for the memorandum of understanding at Clark School. We are going to table that, as Max has suggested. The consent agenda. The consent agenda is designed to expedite the handling of routine and miscellaneous business of the district. The school committee may adopt the entire consent agenda with one motion. At the request of any committee member, any item or items may be removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda for discussion. There are two items, regular session minutes from September 26th and regular session minutes from October 24th. Will someone please make a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion.
Someone second?
Second.
All in favor?
I got all of us.
Aye.
Aye.
And then lastly, we will adjourn. Will someone please make a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Anyone second? All approved. We are done. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, thank you.